Good morning, everybody. 3rd of January. It's quite a nice morning out here this morning. No, you probably don't need a weather report, it's just what I'm in the habit of saying, and it is a particularly nice, cool morning out in the shed. There's a dog who's having a chat out there, um, which is nice as well. Update on the novel. I just finished planning Act 3.4, so the end of Chapter 3 and the end of Part 1 of the novel. I was going to try to do it yesterday afternoon, but actually had my first day back at work yesterday, working from home, but still a full day of work. And when I got to the afternoon, I thought I'll try to do some writing, but I just didn't really. I'd been on the computer all day, so it just didn't feel like what I wanted to do at that point. But I did. I did make an effort to sit down for 15 minutes at the end of the day, and I still didn't really have a very good grasp on what was going to happen in the act. So I asked myself lots of questions. I just wrote down lots of questions into the planning outline about. Well, first of all, actually, I was going to show you something. I will in a moment. The ways that have been used using maps in the storytelling of the planning of the story. Sorry, because the book is set in Newcastle where I live, and it's just such a neat thing, particularly using Apple Maps, that I was this morning, being able to look at buildings, look at city streets, swivel around, zoom in. It was just such a neat way of doing it. I don't know if if it would be applicable to things you're doing, but I certainly found it very useful to do that. I probably don't need to show you. You understand what everyone's used maps at this stage, but yeah, I've been using that a great deal this morning, but also yesterday afternoon when I was having a think about. I knew a general sense of what I wanted to have take place in the act, but I didn't have specifics. So I thought, first thing to do is start by just looking at the setting. Where are they physically going to walk? They're going to go from point X to point Y. How are they going to get there? And then when I started to look at those things on the map and started to write them down onto my planning document, I got a sense of things that could happen in the places that they went to, and those things that happened connected to things that had been foreshadowed previously in a really neat way, ways that I wanted to explore the particular meaning, particular incidents that had happened, but didn't really know the way to do it until I looked at the physical settings and thought, oh, that's exactly where that can happen, and it will make a lot more sense to happen there than maybe in some other way I hadn't considered. Pardon me. So that was really nice. So for step one, look at the physical location of the maps, and then step two, I just asked lots and lots of questions to myself about things there. How they're going to feel when this particular thing is finished. What sort of things do they need to do with each other, or discuss with each other, or think for themselves before they get to that point. Those sorts of questions to help me to reflect on what needed to be addressed and answered and scheduled in for the scenes across this particular act. And it was really helpful because when I sat down this morning, fresh head, have had a sleep and best time of morning for thinking, I was able to sit down, look through the questions, look again at the map, and then slowly work out exactly how it was all going to happen. And as it's planned this morning, I'm really happy with it. I think it's a really good pacing. All the events that need to take place are taking place, but not as much action as some of the other sections, because it is a particular moment in the book for reflecting and considering a lot of things that have happened, and then a particular reveal at the end of the chapter that will set up part two of the book for chapters 4, 5, and 6. So I'm really happy with it. One of the things that I think I keep telling myself well, two things. One is that I'm very excited now about starting part two. I feel like I've done everything I can do in part one. It's all in there. I like it. I can't wait to write it, in terms of prose. And now I've got part two, which is a whole other space to consider. I'm really excited now. I mean, I get to turn off from thinking about the novel, put in a work day, and then I'll wake up in the morning with a fresh approach in terms of doing part two. But the other thing that was getting me excited is when I've got part two finished, so the whole novel will be outlined, going back into part one again and doing that third round of outlining edit, based on what I learn about what the characters do in part two. Because I know that there are things that I'm not addressing completely, or I've got a vague idea about, or I make a little comment in the notes about how this might come to play later. But I need to address those more because they're things I don't understand yet about everything that's going to take place in part two of the novel. So when I do part two, I'll be able to go back and then readdress those considerations and those questions in part one again for the third round of edits, and then I'll do those third round of edits again on part two of the novel, and it may even go through another iteration of edits there until I know that everything is matching up and it's all a seamless thing. And I may have talked about this when I first recorded, I'm not sure, but I have always been interested in serial novelists, in like Dostoevsky with Crime and Punishment, like publishing chapters of the book in journals and having some idea of where it was going, but not completely. Like he couldn't go back when he was publishing chapter 7 to go back to chapter 1 and 2 and think, oh man, I would have loved to have tinkered with Raskolnikov and set up a particular foreshadowing of this event, or change this particular description because it's going to help later. He I mean, obviously master novelist, but he also had to have that confidence going forward based on how he was publishing the book, which was the most economically achievable and realistic way of doing it at the time. That publishing it in that fashion, he was going to have to give up the control of going back to the very start and doing major edits on the things that had come before, because he had to keep going through. So I mean, I think that's very exciting to work in that way. It's not the way that I'm working here. I want to get to the end of the outlining and be able to go through the whole fabric of the novel, to make everything match up and sync up in ways that you couldn't possibly do when you serialize it in that fashion. So that's where I'm at. It's all good. I feel very happy that 3.4 is finished. The first half of the novel is done. It all fits well in my mind, and like I said, I'm looking forward to part 2 tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to be doing afternoon writing sessions like I have been for the past week. I'm going to just be doing the mornings, which are the most important time for me, this period where I wake up early, write before work starts, and then I do a full work day, and in the afternoon spend time with family and enjoy the evening without trying to squeeze in another hour of writing. So which is good. It takes a bit of the pressure off me trying to think about writing in 2 sessions across the day, but at the same time I don't lose any real productivity, because this is the most productive time of day. I think yesterday I even made a little joke about I'd like to track data on the chapters I planned in the morning compared to the afternoon, and whether there's some sort of emotional and cognitive difference between those two. I think the consideration there is that I certainly don't feel I'm losing any pace through just writing in the morning. My goal eventually with the prose will be to do around 500 words a day. I think, well, each scene in each act is around 650 words, so say around 650 words, which is very achievable in, say, a 2-hour morning writing session. I think that should be completely fine. We will find out how confident I am once I get going on that. but certainly at this stage I've got no concerns about that. Very happy with where it's at, and I'll sign off and wish you a happy day, and I'll be back tomorrow morning. See you then.